Yesterday lost their lives, and those who are maimed, Mr. Speaker, during yesterday's demonstrations. Mr. Speaker, yesterday was unprecedented. We witnessed an invasion of Parliament, and I want to thank the Almighty God that He saved my friend Senator Chute. When I was watching the news, I didn't know that the person who survived that ordeal was Senator Chute. We thank the Almighty God for you, Mr. Speaker, and that is a stern reminder that if we are not resonating with the people we represent, nobody is safe in this country. Mr. Speaker, I want to stand by differing with the majority leader and minority, and by opposing the motion that is on the floor to adjourn the House. Mr. Speaker, if you are an elected leader at this point in time, the people you represent are looking up to us to provide solutions, Mr. Speaker. I am sure that the people of the great county of Nyamira, Mr. Speaker, want to see what solutions can we offer as a house to the issues that have been brought to the table by Generation Z. Is it Generation Z? By the young people. By adjourning this House, Mr. Speaker, we are running away from confronting the challenges and the problems that are facing us as a country, Mr. Speaker. If you adjourn this House and I retreat to the village, how am I going to address the issues that are on the table, Mr. Speaker? This is a time, Mr. Speaker, that we need as a House to have a bipartisan approach on how we resolve the issues that are facing us as a country, Mr. Speaker. If, as has been put by Senator Chute, the young people are indicting this House that we have failed even on addressing issues of corruption, Mr. Speaker, issues of excesses by those who are in leadership. How is adjourning this House going to give hope and confidence to our youth, Mr. Speaker? And Mr. Speaker, the first issue I want to raise, Mr. Speaker, is that for many years, Mr. Speaker, this House has witnessed the mutilation of the 2010 Constitution on passage of legislations, Mr. Speaker. I've had the benefit, Mr. Speaker, of going through the Finance Bill 2024, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, our Constitution is very clear, Mr. Speaker, that if we have any legislation that touches on functions of counties, such a legislation, Mr. Speaker, must be considered by the National Assembly and by the Senate. And Mr. Speaker, Article 110 of the Constitution defines bills concerning county governments. Article 110(1)(a) says, a bill concerning, in this Constitution, a bill concerning county government means a bill containing provisions affecting the functions and powers of county governments. And Mr. Speaker, Article 110(3) states that before either House considers a bill, the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Speaker of the Senate shall jointly resolve any question as to whether it is a bill concerning counties and whether it's a special or ordinary bill. Mr. Speaker, I've read the Finance Bill 2024. If you read the memorandum to that bill at page 599, Mr. Speaker, the bill proposes, and I want to read, the bill proposes to amend pieces of legislation relating to fees, levies, management of public funds. But what is more important, Mr. Speaker, to this House is that that particular bill proposes to amend the Affordable Housing Act, more so Section 54. Mr. Speaker, if you go to the answer, it doesn't matter. The thing is that that was a provision that was in the bill. We have a chance to make comments on it, Mr. Speaker. That's the point. That Section 54 was introduced to the Affordable Housing Act by amendment that was introduced by this House, the Senate. It was sent to the National Assembly, and the National Assembly concurred. And that Section 54 was enacted into the the Affordable Housing Act, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, the Finance Bill of 2024 has purported to amend that particular section of the Affordable Housing Act by proposing a deletion without the involvement of the Senate, Mr. Speaker. That is trying to introduce an amendment to that piece of legislation through the back door. The second one, Mr. Speaker, is proposals to amend the Data Protection Act. And Mr. Speaker, you know, it's on record that that piece of legislation was also considered by the Senate. Again, those amendments have been proposed as part of the Finance Bill 2024. The third one, Mr. Speaker, is an amendment to the Public Finance Management Act, a piece of legislation that serves both national government and county government, Mr. Speaker. The question I'm posing to us this morning, as leaders who have seen what has happened around, did our Speaker, the Honorable Speaker of the Senate, participate in concurrence with the Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker? Because if we sit here today, Mr. Speaker, and tomorrow we see this bill being assented to by the President without the involvement of the Senate, what we are telling Kenyans is that the culture of impunity that triggered demonstrations, that triggered the storming of Parliament, will continue being entrenched, Mr. Speaker. And if that is the case, Mr. Speaker, we are not addressing the issues that are facing this country, Mr. Speaker. What prevents us, Mr. Speaker, from demanding that before the President assents to the finance bill, Mr. Speaker, and it's the finance bill that has triggered the challenges that we are facing as a country, why can't we demand as a Senate that that bill be brought to us before it's assented by the President, Mr. Speaker? And Mr. Speaker, I want to draw the attention of the House that there is nothing in this Constitution that stops this House from considering the finance bill as long as it has provisions that affect functions of county governments. The Constitution only has a restriction on the originating house when it comes to money bills. It says money bills may originate from the National Assembly, but it does not say that they will not be considered by the Senate, Mr. Speaker. So if the government chose, Mr. Speaker, to introduce bills that touch on functions of counties in the finance bill, then the best that we should do as a House is to demand that that bill comes to the Senate for consideration before it's assented to by the President. Number two, Mr. Speaker, as we adjourn, I condemn and don't support destruction of property, Mr. Speaker. But I equally, Mr. Speaker, denounce the use of live bullets by our police officers on demonstrators. If you watched CNN this morning, Mr. Speaker, Kenya was accorded, I tried to take the minutes, we were accorded repeatedly in the news, more than an hour this morning. And the focus was that the Kenyan police used live bullets to kill innocent, unarmed demonstrators within the precincts of Parliament, not at Moi Avenue, not on University Way, but within the precincts of Parliament. I understand it's wrong, Mr. Speaker, to invade the institution of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, but do we support, as a House, Mr. Speaker, the use of live bullets on demonstrators, Mr. Speaker? Senator Chuta has told us this morning that we all know there is something we call rubber bullets. We know it. There are those rungus, I don't know how we call them in English, that can be used to quell demonstrations. But, Mr. Speaker, should we, as a country, independent country, 62 years after regaining our independence, open live bullets on demonstrators. What is the difference between Kenya today and the apartheid South Africa? What is the difference? When we watched Sarafina movie shot in South Africa, where the police during apartheid were opening fire on blacks in South Africa fighting for the independence of that country, and what we witnessed yesterday. What is the difference, Mr. Speaker? When these pictures are being shown in CNN, Mr. Speaker, what picture are we portraying for our nation? What picture are we portraying, Mr. Speaker? I witnessed during the unfortunate incidents, which again I don't support, that happened in Washington when Trump led demonstrators to invade Congress. Nobody approved. I don't approve it up to today. It was a wrong thing to do. But there was restraint from the police force in the US. There was restraint from the police in the US. Nobody was shot dead. In fact, the person who lost his life instead was a police officer who, in extreme restraint, sustained injuries that were fatal. But in this country, Mr. Speaker, yesterday, we opened fire on young people. The statistics have it that we lost 5 lives, but it could be more, Mr. Speaker. So we as a House, instead of adjourning, Mr. Speaker, we need to know who was in command of those police officers. Can you imagine if Honorable Chute here, can you imagine if those youths also turned on him and killed him yesterday? What could have happened, Mr. Speaker? Because, Mr. Speaker, this constitution in chapter 14 has standards that should be applied by our police force, Mr. Speaker. And we have structures, Mr. Speaker. Under Article 145, there is only one Kenyan who should give us answers, the Inspector General of Police. He's the one who has commanding authority over the National Police Service, Mr. Speaker. Worse still, Mr. Speaker, we have the National Security Council that has supervisory powers over all the security organs, the Defense Forces, the NSIS, the National Police Service, Mr. Speaker. And that council, Mr. Speaker, the National Security Council under Article 240 is chaired by none other than the President of the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. Is he approving those kind of murdering of our youths by police force, Mr. Speaker? And we know, Mr. Speaker, that the UN Assembly of State Parties in 1979 passed a code of conduct for security organs in all countries that are members of the UN, Mr. Speaker. And when you are dealing with a demonstration, Mr. Speaker, you are not allowed to use live bullets unless the demonstrators themselves are using equal force. If you see people coming to Parliament opening fire on the police officers, that can be excused. But you're dealing with people who are invoking their right under Article 37. If they have invaded Parliament, we can invoke our laws, have them arrested, charged, taken to court. You listened yesterday, Mr. Speaker, our Chief Justice issued a statement. That's unprecedented. And he urged our security organs. He told them the courts will open beyond 6 p.m. Arrest anybody who's breaking the law and bring them to us. He didn't tell them that open fire and kill. No. So, Mr. Speaker, what happened yesterday should be condemned, Mr. Speaker. We want a country that respects the rule of law. If There are people who have broken the law. Let them be arrested, be taken to courts of law, charged, tried, and if they are found guilty, they should be jailed, but not to kill demonstrators using live bullets. So I oppose this motion, Mr. Speaker, because we have serious issues that we need to prosecute and deal with now, not in July. That is what is expected of us as the people's representative, Mr. Speaker. So I oppose, I'm sorry to differ with the majority leader and also differ with the minority leader, that we cannot adjourn while the country is burning. Parliament can sit even when, during wartime, Mr. Speaker. But if we adjourn and run away, then we are cowards. This is not a house of cowards, Mr. Speaker. We have distinguished leaders here. Let us know what are the problems facing us at this hour, at this time in our history. What are the solutions? How do we deal with them? If you adjourn today and you see the youths again demonstrating on Monday, are you going to deal with these issues from Nandi or from Marsabit? No. You deal with the issues from here on this floor, Mr. Speaker. So I oppose this motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chirange.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From the onset, I want to empathize and sympathize with many Kenyans and police officers who have lost their lives over anarchy that we witnessed yesterday in the Republic of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I'm also happy that most of your colleagues, including yourself, escaped unearthed. So, Speaker, extra times needs extra measures. While we agree, Mr. Speaker, that the conversation that started in good faith and with serious concerns is very valid. Mr. Speaker, we would not want to lose our country to people who want to take advantage of the situation that we are in as a country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let us remain focused. What happened yesterday at Parliament was unfortunate. It should never have happened. It should not have happened, Mr. Speaker. I remember one of my colleagues a few weeks ago, we didn't question the security systems within Parliament, and it is good the Commissioner of PAC is here, Senator Okongo Omugeni. Through you, Mr. Speaker, I wish Senator Okongo Omugeni would be listening. When we questioned, Mr. Speaker, even at the opening of the Bunge Towers, we were told there are 3 layers of security within Bunge Square. But yesterday, people had to run through ambulances, Mr. Speaker. People had to sleep in ambulances like cops, Mr. Speaker, which was very unfortunate. But when we questioned the security of Parliament the last 3 weeks ago or 1 month, we were being told we were being populist. Some of us were being threatened to be taken to powers and privileges for speaking out. And I said on this floor of the House, Mr. Speaker, that if we cannot speak for ourselves, who will speak for us? Yesterday, the people came, invaded, Mr. Speaker, the Parliament, which has never happened in the history of this republic. So, Speaker, I shudder to think that if those young men and women would have accessed Parliament when we are in session, Mr. Speaker, they would not care who you are. I saw some of my colleagues, respectively from the minority, trying to escape through the bypass. And I don't want to name names, Mr. Speaker. They were calling them enemies, and they were people of the minority side who have even voted no for the finance bill. Mr. Speaker, I want to assure the country, and as leaders, we must come together. Despite our political affiliation, despite our thinking, it will not matter whether you are in the minority and majority. When the Gen Zs come for us, they will not care how you spoke or the affiliation that you have. They will only care with one thing. What have you done for this country, Mr. Speaker? What have you said? And I agree, it is the time to fight impunity, to fight corruption, Mr. Speaker, and anybody who has taken public money, Mr. Speaker, anybody who has shown arrogance and impunity, Mr. Speaker, including even counties, and I want to challenge governors, they might feel that they are safe. In fact, from the sources, allegations are appearing, the next stop is county governments, Mr. Speaker, and county institutions, because Kenyans are tired They want to have a country. And I'm happy for the first time, as a country, we're having a conversation by the people and for the people, for the sake of the betterment of the future of this republic, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thirdly, Mr. Speaker, I tend to disagree with the majority and minority leader. Even in terms of war, in Iraq, in Israel, and everywhere across the world, there is no way Parliament has run away from responsibility. Mr. Speaker, respectfully, while I agree there could be persuasive reasons, if we run away when our leadership is needed more than ever, we will provide leadership from Nyamira. Bishop, we will provide leadership when we are all a coward and being in our underbeds, somewhere in Nyamira, somewhere in Narok, Mr. Speaker, somewhere in Kapsabet, Mr. Speaker. This is the right time we should be sitting as Parliament and be part of the conversation on what the young people are raising. If they need, imagine if young people tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, said in their proposal, we need policy and legislative intervention. Where will we be? We will be somewhere taking care of cows in Narok or somewhere in Luanda where the market is in disarray, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let us avoid this being emotional. I know there is wisdom on adjournment. But Mr. Speaker, since the chamber is somehow functional, and I've seen, on a lighter note, Mr. Speaker, some of us have been having reservations of food. I saw the GMC saying the chef of Bunge should look at the receipt. They are putting too much pili-pili. But Mr. Speaker, even the functionality of our hospitality sources around are still functional up to 80%. Even, and I know, although our staff also were affected, and we are with them in prayers and in thoughts. I know some of them were attacked in their offices, but we are praying with them through the clerk. But we are happy that they can get that courage. This is when leadership is needed. Mr. Speaker, if everybody closes, imagine judiciary today adjourns for 1 month, and we have had the Chief Justice saying we can even do extra hours in case there are people being brought to court. Judiciary has even said, let us sit beyond normal times. Mr. Speaker, executive is working beyond the normal time. Now Parliament, where we are the representatives of the people, Senator Ledama, where we are the representatives of the people, are now going home to hide. And it is unfair for the country. When the judiciary provides leadership, the executive provides, as Parliament, where we are the people represented, we should even be sitting beyond times to burn the midnight oil, Mr. Speaker, and be part of the people who will resolve the crisis, Mr. Speaker. I think we need to be serious, Mr. Speaker. I know they were, and I want to appeal, under Article 37, every person has a right to demonstrate. But we want also to ask the people who demonstrate also to do it peacefully and within the confines of the rule of law. And also, we want to ask the security agencies within the country to also have proper intelligence. And this calls to question the role of National Intelligence Service, Mr. Speaker. If the new Parliament would be under siege, the number of police and the organization of security structure, including the barricade and many others, Mr. Speaker, they should have ensured that they would have planned properly, Mr. Speaker, so that we would not have witnessed situations where Parliament would be invaded, where it would be disregarded, Mr. Speaker. In some democracies, it shows that we have lost legitimacy of the people, Mr. Speaker, despite that we were elected. Therefore, the security apparatus within the country should also be on lookout. While we empathize and sympathize with the police, Mr. Speaker, I have seen a police officer who lost their hands the other day, admitted. And we empathize, and one has lost the life the other day, I think yesterday night in Kuturai. A number have been injured across the country. While we empathize and sympathize with the police, we ask the police command also and security agencies to be well organized so that in future, even if criminals want to infiltrate, Mr. Speaker, in these peaceful demonstrations, they can be isolated and dealt with. Let the criminals be dealt with as per the law and within the law, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I really want to plead as a country and as a Parliament. This is the moment we need to provide leadership. I am told, Mr. Speaker, as Winston Churchill said, the person who matters is the person in the ring. That has sweat and blood in trying and resolving crisis, Mr. Speaker. When in crisis, This is when leaders are made. This is when leadership is shown. Senate Minority Leader, it is not okay for us to adjourn and go home and go and do our things and watch things through social media, through TikTok, through Viusasa or any other media outlets, Mr. Speaker. It is us as a Senate, Mr. Speaker, I expected today in the morning to be sitting as a Senate. How do we become part of the solution to this process, that the challenges that we are facing as a country, Mr. Speaker? And I'm happy that you have found time, Mr. Speaker, to be here, despite the challenges that we saw yesterday, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, no, but that was the only way. It was a security arrangement using ambulance, Mr. Speaker. But we are happy you are safe. Other people who use ambulance, like Senator Chute, did not succeed. Their efforts were thwarted by well-organized, Mr. Speaker. And Senator Chute, in future, I was advising him, he should get a Red Cross ambulance and get the flag. You know, those ones under the law, they cannot be stopped, and even demonstrators understand. And that is my advice to Senator Chute. Finally, Mr. Speaker, this is the right time as a country to engage into the going future. We should stop name calling. We should call for peace. We should resolve, Mr. Speaker, and ensure we remain steady focused. This country belongs to all of us, Mr. Speaker. When the country goes down, it does not matter whether you are seated on minority or majority. As a country, we must come together and resolve going into the future. With those very many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I oppose 101% against the adjournment motion. Let Parliament sit and provide leadership to the country and assist in moving the country forward. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker. Senator Ledama, then Senator Kathy for gender.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion that the Senate of the Republic of Kenya should adjourn. And in fact, I'm just nearly coming short of saying this House and government should be dissolved. Because we have failed and we are cowards, let us not lie that we are not cowards. Mr. Speaker, what is leading this country right now are citizens' assemblies. Recently, there was a citizen assembly through the space of Twitter or X. It brought about over 1.2 million people to listen. This country, Mr. Speaker, is going through a crisis that is unheard of. This is a crisis. It is a fire that has been lit up by the IMF, and we know very well that IMF does not put out fires in countries, it leads them. Mr. Speaker, the only thing that makes sense today is for us to be with our citizens and try to demystify what is happening in this country. Mr. Speaker, my colleague has spoken here, Senator Mogeni, and he has pointed out the lack of respect to the rule of law by this Parliament, because the National Assembly is part of this House, where the National Assembly is amending 3 pieces of legislation that are supposed to be considered by both houses, and nobody gives a hoot in hell about the consequences. This House sat, amended the Housing Act, proposed, by then it was a housing bill, and made sure that what was being put out there, that we are building houses for the poor, those houses cannot be sold. Now, through a miscellaneous amendment, or through the Finance Act, or the Finance Bill, the National Assembly comes in and removes that, because you don't care. Mr. Speaker, some of us are being bashed outside. I am personally being bashed outside because of miscommunication. Mr. Speaker, there was a conflict of interest bill which was brought into this House. That conflict of interest bill, my colleague and I, Senator Mogeni, sat down and looked at all the provisions that were being proposed in that conflict of interest bill, which was sponsored by the IMF and a corrupt Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission of this country. Because, Mr. Speaker, there is nobody which is corrupt more than ESCC. ESCC now wanted to be put in